Hi, everyone. We're back with the Educator Wellness Revolution, and we are here with Megan McCormick from MedStar Wise. Megan, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can you start by introducing yourself and sharing more about who you are, how you started doing the work you're doing, and then tell us about MedStar Wise and the work you do to support wellness in schools, specifically with educators?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Dr. Megan McCormick. I'm a child clinical psychologist and the co-founder and director of programs and innovation for the Center for Wellbeing in School Environments at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital, the Y Center for short. Yeah, I started doing school-based mental health over 10 years ago in DC, really just because we, myself and a colleague who's also a psychologist, just saw a need for increasing access to care for students, mental health care for students in underserved parts of our city, and got into schools, saw how stressed educators were, and how much need there was within the educator community for more support. And so over time, we developed an aspect of our programming that has since grown and is the biggest part of what we do, which is to develop and implement programs that are designed to reduce mental health issues and burnout in educators. And that's the majority of what we do. We partner with schools and still do some support for students and families, but mostly provide mental health supports on many levels for educators and school leaders.
It's such an amazing service, and anytime we talk to a partner school that we've shared where they have MedStar Wise and they have that therapy, it's just an incredible benefit to the educators that are there. Tell us more about what is the value uniquely of bringing it in-house for staff members, and then have you found there to be any drawbacks of doing it in that setting?
Yeah, the biggest advantage is access. We regularly survey all of the educators who come into services with us once they're exiting services. And this is the thing we see consistently over and over again. People saying the fact that I was able to get therapy support in the middle of my school day without having to leave, take time off, drive to an office was invaluable. And we see a lot of folks come to us for care who have never been in care before and have wanted care and tried to seek that out in the community, but just couldn't make it work. As you know, like teacher schedules don't really allow for much, right? So just the access, I would say related to that is the visibility. Us being in the building, we become part of the school team. We become a part of the culture and climate, and people see us and they become comfortable with us. And so many of the barriers that you normally see to people accessing mental health care, the stigma, just the unknown of what that means and who the person is and whether you'll connect with them. We break those barriers down by just being in the building, and also having school leaders messaging, hey, this is somebody we're paying money to have in the building and we want you to take advantage of that, I think goes a long way. We also hear from folks that just our working knowledge of schools and educators and us having an expertise and specialty in the specific stressors that educators face is something that people find really valuable. Although I think that the types of things that people present with are also just the types of things that any person struggles with, but there certainly is a specific aspect of being an educator that people really find comfort in, knowing that this person I'm meeting with understands that and understands my school.
It's such a unique work and intersection. Are there like particular kinds of therapists that you find are drawn to this? Because it's, people obviously have a passion for education and understand the need for it, right, in a school environment. And there's kind of a deep understanding of like what the school environment is there. Have you found that there's kind of a trend around the people who want to do this work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, people that believe deeply in systems-based care. So the interesting thing is we mostly hired child specialized practitioners in our center, but all of us are also trained to see adults. And what you find is people who are deeply committed to working with the people who surround children in order to improve their lives, and people who believe that it's not on the person necessarily, but that we exist in systems and communities, and we have to understand all of that and work together as a system to really improve the functioning of the people living within that system. So I would say yes, in the sense that we're attracting people who really care about systems-based work, who see schools as these complicated families, and these places where we can do really magical things, where everybody in the building really believes in the same thing and wants the same thing, but is also under a lot of stress. And so people who are really familiar with like family-based therapies, system-based therapies, and people who are committed to kids and adults alike. You asked about drawbacks also. Would you like me to?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's also a good question. There are inherent complications and complexities that come with working within a big family, right? Which is kind of how we see schools. And so I think that there's some, we just have to juggle knowing all the players, right? And often we'll have a clinician who's seeing for therapy lots of people who are kind of in the same family, so to speak, and frustrated with one another, and experiencing things in the push and pull of these dynamics within a school. And so we have to, again, manage that in ways that are similar to doing family therapy or family within, therapy within systems. I think the other thing that people and even school leaders often ask us about is, what about the idea of treating someone who has complex trauma histories, which is many educators that we see, unfortunately, and doing that in the middle of the school day when they have to go back into their classroom and teach. And so that's something that a question that we've answered since we began doing the same kind of integrated care with students. And what we do is we always just try to work out the timing of sessions to be what's most comfortable for the educator. And we make sure to anchor our sessions starting and ending in grounding and mindfulness-based techniques, which always seems to be helpful. So we never really had a problem with that, but we just, it's something we always innovate around a little bit. And in some cases, we will refer out to another person within our center to see someone if it feels like they need to be seen outside of the school or outside of the school day.
What are some of the themes you keep hearing from educators, and has that changed through this pandemic period?
Yeah, I mean, many of the educators that come to therapy with us are facing the same things that you see in all people: depression, anxiety, interpersonal issues, trauma. But specific to educators, we obviously see just a lot of burnout, a lot of professional dissatisfaction. And I think what we know about educators, you guys know this, you are educators, and is the sense of meaning and purpose that people get from their work is often, competing with the way they feel like it's going for them. And so we find people who are really deeply conflicted about wanting to be in this profession that they see as their calling, and also working within a school or in relationships or just within a profession that doesn't feel like it lifts them up and like it really acknowledges them and their contributions. And so that is something that we see probably in every person who's coming to see us. I think, yeah, for many people, they'll even come to us because they're facing issues and just managing their classrooms, for instance. And so the advantage that we have is that we're there and we can be a part of their lives and see parts of their lives, and help them more concretely than I think we would if we were sitting in an office and they were traveling to see us.
I'd love to talk about burnout. Just this is a curiosity I've had. How do you define something like burnout versus the feeling of demoralization versus compassion fatigue? Are they all the same flavors of the same thing that's happening? Or I'm curious how you see it.
They can all happen at the same time, but they are different. Burnout, I think we think of exhaustion, is really just kind of being overworked, and just the exhaustion that comes with that, just feeling just out of breath with regards to your work and losing interest maybe and things like that. Demoralization is deeper than that. This is when people really lose a sense of their humanity or their spirit in their work, and it's usually caused by mistreatment. So this is not just like I'm staying up late to plan lessons and I do that too often and I'm tired. This is, I have interactions within my workplace that are that really strip me of my hope or my sense of control, or just leave me feeling defeated as a person. And so it's really kind of like a different level, I would say, of burnout. Compassion fatigue is vicarious trauma, essentially. So that's where you really become, it's kind of a specific form of burnout, if you will, but you're actually experiencing negative emotions or distress yourself as a result of helping others. So spending a lot of time in a helping profession, serving others, immersing yourself in the lives of other people can often result in you feeling those same types of mental health symptoms or negative emotions that you're seeing in the people around you.
So, I mean, I think the educators that we see are experiencing all of those things often, but in particular, I think demoralization is really deep in a lot of the people, and I'm sure a lot of the people you see. What are the kinds of supports that you find that people are looking for when they really are feeling that kind of deep demoralization, and how does the work you do help connect them to those supports?
Yeah, I think there are lots of different things that we piece together in this to try to make this as rich as we can for people, because it is, for many people, they need mental health treatment for very specific things, right? So unresolved grief, complex trauma, depression, anxiety. And so for those types of presentations, and I'm talking like psychobabble here a little bit, sorry, for those types of presentations in therapy, we deliver mental health treatment that's evidence-based to inform that. That said, we also, for many people, they need listening, they need validation, they need someone who can concretely help them solve problems and execute on those problems. For beyond that, one of the things that we really lean into as practitioners with this population is mobilizing the person through advocacy, supporting them through our advocacy, so they don't lose this sense of hope, right? Because I think that that's so critical for educators. We sit in a position in schools where one of the conditions really that we have as part of our partnerships with schools is that we have the ability to provide feedback to leadership. And so what we will do while leaders don't know who is receiving services with us, we come to them regularly with themes that we might be hearing about. And so that gives us an opportunity to impact the organization in a way that can help a person who is struggling with things that are very environmentally motivated, right? And so we lean into advocacy, and from our work, we also encourage advocacy on the part of others that we're seeing, because I think that because so much of what people are coming in with is environmentally driven, we think it's a really important part of treatment. Again, treatment is just what the word we use for support, in our support of other people, to elevate their voices, to help them feel that there is a way that they can be a part of change in their system. And so advocacy becomes a big part of our work as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because obviously we, in Empowered Ed, really believe in the connection between those two, between wellness and advocacy. And I think that's actually, we exist in a system that tries to separate them out really hard in some ways, right? That tries to say, like, we know you're demoralized, we know you're burnt out, we know people are leaving our schools, but what we need is just to focus on your individual wellness, to take care of yourself, to have these strategies to deal with your stress, and you're going to be fine, right? And that they very much do not want it connected, often system-wise, right, to advocacy. But hopelessness, right? The cure for hopelessness is hope in some ways, right? And that happens through being empowered to actually advocate and feel like you can be part of a change, whether it's a change that is benefiting you in your own school environment or a broader kind of change in the system. So it's so important that we tie those two things together, because it is part of what people need individually, and it is also what people need, so we're not constantly trying to solve for the burnout and demoralization. We're actually doing something about it more systematically. I'm curious then what you think are, like, what are the systemic changes that you see that would be most helpful to supporting educators' mental health?
Yeah. I think people feel isolated, and this kind of to say a little more about your point, that I also think what advocacy does is it gives us a common goal with people around us, and it helps us to connect with others. And I think that that's one of the things that people are feeling within schools right now, is that their humanity is kind of getting lost. There's not time, or maybe there's too much distress for people to really connect with colleagues on a meaningful level, and relationships with school leaders are often very strained. And this is one of the biggest things that we see, with people who feel demoralized and feel that that's coming from their organization. It's just people being so busy and so distressed that they're looking past each other, right? And so I think that one of the things that we really work with school leaders on is shifting mindset around why people are doing what they're doing, and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and really understanding, like, thinking compassionately about the self and about others, and how much our capacity is strained to be the people that we want to be every second, right? And so just some of that mutual understanding and empathy is a big part of that. Encouraging school leaders to have individual one-on-one meetings, encouraging mentorship type programs. It's very hard for people to add things to their schedule in this situation, right? So I think that some schools want to get after this by doing things like, let's have a happy hour, let's get to, this kind of thing, but that just is not feasible for many people. And so a lot of what it is how can we look at the things that are already happening, the meetings that we have, the places that we're already showing up together, and how can we stop in those moments and ask ourselves, what's most important? Do we have to give this announcement that I already wrote in the newsletter and I've sent an email about? Or could we use this 5 minutes to look each other in the eyes and provide an affirmation? Or could we use this time to celebrate someone? we tell school leaders all the time, anything that you're willing to do for your students, be willing to do for your staff. Stop and ask yourself at every moment, could I involve someone in this decision? Could I ask for feedback about this thing? Now that takes more time, right? But the payoff for school leaders, this becomes an investment that works, right? Because if you can have strong relationships with staff members, then that's ground that you stand on then when you hit bumps in the road. And this is the same principles that come from parent and child therapies and sort of interaction-based therapies. It's really the same. If you can use positive ways to build and strengthen relationships. So again, within the time that you have already, right? Not adding stuff on top of things, but strengthening those relationships, then everybody can make mistakes. People are going to make mistakes. Everyone in a school is under stress. But we have some relationship to stand on, right? And that mutual trust and respect, I think, is the biggest thing that we should be working on in schools, above and beyond, procedures for, disciplinary problems in staff, or what do we do when someone doesn't show up on time and we need to give them a reprimand. There's a lot of energy that goes into controlling people in a school building, right? And this kind of hierarchy. And again, these are parallels to what we know from interactions between adults and children, right? Is if we focus on power and control, then we will get nowhere, right? If we focus on strengthening the relationships, then other things fall into place. So I would say that I could talk forever about that, guys. But relationship, our motto at WISE is relationships can heal, and this is really what we lean into most of the time. I think if we're talking about really big picture, what's needed, it's just, more resources are needed, right? Teachers are just playing too many roles in the school building, and they're strapped. And so nationally, we need reform. I don't have to tell you guys this. We need more resources in schools, right? But like on a school-based level, what can school leaders do? I think it's really leaning into relationships, being vulnerable, being willing to take feedback, and also knowing that you as a school leader is experiencing everything that everyone else in your school building is experiencing, just on a different level, and having that compassion for yourself as well.
You said so many important things and what you just shared there. We really stress when we're working with schools and school leaders this human-centered approach, just to recognize that every single person in that building is dealing with something difficult, that they got stuck in traffic this morning, their child is sick, their parent is sick, and to be able to really look at the human being first. And we hear this a lot from our teachers, of just like the supervision style that they want is they're willing to take feedback, they're willing to grow, they want to grow as educators, but they need someone to see them as a human being.
Right.
And yet this feels very difficult to really change this mindset. The mindset feels very deeply seated. And so I am curious in terms of leaders who need their own mental health supported, and as they're working within a system that can often be very punitive to them as well, like how do we support leaders better, and to be able to shift this mindset into one where we can really value the human beings?
Yeah, I think so we do a lot of work with school leaders, and most of so I mentioned earlier that we somewhat require an interaction with school leaders on a regular basis in places where we may just even be doing mental health treatment for teachers. But in most cases, school leaders are meeting with us, and a lot of times what that sounds like is kind of a hybrid of consultation about what's happening in the school and the things that they're struggling with from a leadership standpoint, and also their own personal well-being. And so I would say that the biggest impact, comes from these places where school leaders are stepping into this space with us and saying, yeah, I'll do it too. I'll do therapy too, and that's not to say that every school leader needs therapy, but we don't even call it that in many cases. It's we're providing this support so that school leaders can really have someone in the building that they don't supervise, that they don't manage, that they don't employ, and that they can really be completely open with and receive a non-judgmental response, because they're just answering to so many people. And, a lot of what we find with school leaders are just usually people who are so self-sacrificing that they often don't want to sit and talk about themselves very much. I can't say that's true for everybody, but we find this as kind of a theme. And so I find that what seems to be very helpful for school leaders is giving them tools that help them feel more accomplished and efficacious in their jobs, because they just have such big jobs. And there's no way that they're going to feel like they're doing a good job for every person in the building at all times. And so, again, some of that is helping improve practice and skill in some ways, where they can, listen better, support someone more effectively, but also helping to shift mindset and sort of a interpersonal approach, right? To just be more vulnerable, more open, and to shed some of these ideas that I think are just deeply baked into education and schools around hierarchies and power, but for many school leaders, it's just a really good exercise to sit and think about all the things that they are able to accomplish in a day, because they will certainly end the day feeling unaccomplished in many ways. And I find that school leaders are often perfectionistic and kind of, sometimes the best and worst ways, both at the same time. They're obviously high achieving people to have gotten to where they are and to be doing the jobs that they are. And I think that also comes with a need for balance and grace and really just kind of leaning into their own humanity as well.
Yeah, it can feel, I feel like for us perfectionists, and I identify that way, like it can feel like losing sometimes, but it's really a win, in those moments
Yes,
where
yeah.
you have the openness and the vulnerability. It can feel hard, but it's really powerful too. So we like big ideas on this show, and we want to ask one more question about your big vision, because from the beginning of doing this work, I really see three pieces of wellness in schools, and it's the student wellness, it's the staff wellness, but it's also the family wellness.
Mhm.
And for those three pieces to be working together. And so I'm curious, do you have a vision of, like, in a more resource system, what would that look like?
That's a great question. I think, I think that from where I'm sitting, right, in my position, our ideal is that there are mental health professionals or mental health adjacent people. And what I mean by that is lay people who are adopting mental health practice in some way, right? Which we know can be done. And that there's enough of those people in a building, in a school building, to where the idea of mental health becomes something that is a moment-to-moment daily practice, not something that's stigmatized, not something that we wait to get bad enough in order to get support. But there's programming on every level, from preventative to responsive, for students, families, and educators, so that everyone has a shared language around mental health and well-being, so that everyone has access to the thing that matches not just their need, but what they have capacity and interest in taking advantage of, and just real connectedness. I mean, I think that one of the most powerful exercises that we ever do with schools is, which I'm sure you guys know of, is just like sitting and thinking about, like, every educator and every student by name, person by person, and even their families, and asking ourselves, does that person have someone in this school building that is safe for them, that they feel truly seen and heard by? And so I think that's the utopia, right? Is like, if all people, including students, families, caregivers, feel that there's someone inside this building that sees and hears me for who I am, and that I know I'm safe with. That I think that then what you create is a system where people like me aren't as needed. There's always going to be people that need mental health treatment, right? But I think that what we work to do is build capacity through relationships and through some of this mindset shifting and through some specific skills that people can take on, to spread that out in a way that it's not all just therapists. I think people sometimes these days in our culture are using therapy to replace something that's actually vitally human, right? Which is just like having a connection to a person who is safe and who can give you hard feedback and can also listen to you and validate you and, like, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm not saying that being a therapist is like being a friend, but I think that that there's just such a craving for more connection, that this is where we hope to get, I guess, increasing connection.
Yeah, it's so true. And we always say, you know, schools are very much a human enterprise, and relationships are the key and the foundation to all of it. But we don't really live in a system that values that over the kind of performance and metrics and things that education can be so focused on. But we know that MedStar Wise is helping so many schools get closer to that vision and the work that you're doing. And it's just so important. You've said so many things today that I think are just so important for people on every level in schools and working in education and in and around schools to hear. Megan McCormick, thank you so much for being on the podcast
I
today.
appreciate you. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.